Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the panel, SMEs as leading actors in ensuring the EU's digital sovereignty. It is a first-time experience for us that the SME Assembly is online. Those who know it's a very interactive event, and I hope that this online setting does not change anything in your appetite to participate in discussions and to interact. So I'm looking forward to a very interesting panel and also an ensuing discussions. Participants can send in their questions through the Q&A feed on the live stream. So we'll have three panelists who will give us their views on the topic, and then we will go over and look at your questions. Just a few words on the background why we have chosen this topic. Of course, the transition to the digital economy has been a key priority already before the crisis, and this is also why it has been a guiding topic in our SME strategy that was adopted just a few days before Europe went into a lockdown. Well, with the crisis, digitalisation, the topic has got, I would say, a totally new spin as well. The crisis has accelerated digitalisation. We have all seen the need, how important it is to be digital. What we have also learned during the crisis is that sometimes we may be vulnerable. We have been seeing supply chains breaking down, the reliance on unique or single providers being a problem. So also the topic of getting more sovereign, technologically independent in Europe, not only on the digital side, but on all technologies, has also become a big topic. So this is why we have brought it up to the Assembly. And I'm very happy to have with us a number of panelists who I would say all have digital technologies in their entrepreneurial DNA, and who are all very good examples and can show us how European SMEs can play a role in achieving this digital sovereignty. So I will introduce the first panelist, Valerio Alessandroni. Valerio is the technical director and also the founder of the Estonian Field Pass Competency Center. He's an engineer by education and has been active in automatization, machine-to-machine communication, Internet of Things, providing advice to businesses. He's also a guest professor at the Tallinn Technical University and the author of many publications and articles in that area. Valerio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. I will try to make a short excursus today about innovation and technology under the umbrella of Industry 4.0. Can we start with the slides, please? Okay, next one. So, if we start from a simple consideration, we can see that many companies in different industries started small. On the right side of my slide, I will show you some examples of the so-called garage companies, companies that started in a garage but became afterwards huge companies, huge reference in their own sectors, in their own industries. Before I show these examples, I would like to say that these companies all had a common denominator, which was composed by a winning idea, of course, the right business model, and the right tools not only for production, but also for marketing, service, customer service, and so on. So the examples I would like to make are, for instance, Google. Next, please. Here we can see, if I remember correctly, the Hewlett-Packard headquarters, the initial headquarters. Next, please. Amazon. Next one, please. Harley-Davidson. Next one. There was another example which disappeared. That was Google, as I said before. So what we can say from these examples are the right combination of business model, tools, and innovation were the winning recipe for these companies to become leaders in their respective markets. So we can arrive to the first result that David was the winner. Today is not important to be a big company, to be winner in your own market, because today we often live in a fabless environment. Many companies don't even have their factories, their manufacturing plants. They use third-party plants. Factories are more and more virtual. The size of the company is becoming less and less important to be on the market. And you can be a winner even if you are small. And the examples that I mentioned before demonstrate this. But, next slide, please. We must learn something. We must learn to network with other partners. So we cannot work alone, but we need a network of partners most of the time. We must know what's happening in our premises in real time to react immediately to a new requirement made by the customers, to a change of the market, to some unexpected situation, like, for instance, this year, the pandemic. We must know what our customer want, and we must react anyway quickly to any market change. So there are many prerequisites that we must follow to use the recipe that I showed before. The good news is that today we can do it. Next slide, please. Today, Industry 4.0 gives us the tools to have this winning model applied to our specific market. Industry 4.0 and its enabling technologies can be the answer that we were looking for. Next slide, please. I will not show in details the technologies of Industry 4.0. I just want to mention some of the 7 core technologies that make Industry 4.0, like, for instance, cloud computing, big data, very important to analyze the data that we collect from the field, for instance, or from the manufacturing plant, to know exactly in real time what's happening. Or we can speak about robotics, virtual reality, and so on. Correctly selecting these technologies, it is possible today, even for small and medium companies, to become winner. Next slide, please. The environment, the technology environment in which the companies nowadays are working is completely different compared to a few years ago. We have the Internet of Things, we have Internet of Data, we have Internet of People, and Internet of Services. All these 4 components put together give us a new environment, a new possibility to exploit our idea, to become winners in our field. But next slide, please. There is a common mistake. Industry 4.0 and digitalization are often perceived only as technological concepts, aiming at increased efficiency and reduced costs. This is not the case, because many companies still underestimate the huge impact of innovative business models and their integration into superior digital ecosystems. So what really Industry 4.0 is giving to small and medium enterprises are the tools that allow these enterprises to become part of a digital ecosystem, a superior digital ecosystem. And this is the winning model nowadays. Next slide, please. Digital ecosystems can be thought as of a network where companies, people, data, processes, technologies are connected to shared digital platforms to encourage collaboration and provide useful results to all parties involved, to all the partners. The idea is to create a collection of flexible services that can quickly move and adapt to a company's ever-changing needs. Next slide, please. I would like to show a very simple example of a digital ecosystem. Here you see very well-known companies like Booking.com, like Opodo, like Michelin, TripAdvisor, and so on, each one providing a specific service, and they can be put all together by the customer or by a company that want to use their services for a complete digital ecosystem service palette. So if you want, for instance, to buy a ticket, you can have companies like Opodo. If you want to book a hotel, you have in the digital ecosystem companies like Booking.com. If you want to know if your hotel has a good rate, you can use TripAdvisor. If you want to know the way to arrive to your hotel, you can use Michelin, and so on. So you see, all the companies are working as single companies, but also they are connected in a digital ecosystem. And this is true also for the manufacturing area, also for the service area, and not only for the manufacturing, but for any kind of industry. Here was an example of travels, but we can also apply this model to agricultural, entertainment, medical environment, and so on. Next slide, please. So digital ecosystems are deeply transforming the traditional business model, because instead of using a linear path throughout the supply chain, from suppliers to end customers, the companies can now use new technological platforms and value-added services to create new business opportunities. From a linear path, we are switching to a network where you can select day by day or time by time your ideal partners to create a digital ecosystem with a common target. The target to give a final product, a final service, or to create something new for the final customers. Next slide, please. Now, I would like just to mention a theory that was introduced some years ago by a very interesting book that is Blue Oceans. What we can do when we want to apply these new technologies and create some digital ecosystem with other partners is to find a new business model. This is point number one. If we don't have a good business model, we do nothing with new technologies. To find a good business model or to develop a good business model, the Blue Ocean theory is available. This theory says that there are two kinds of oceans. A red ocean is where there are many competitors. if you want to enter into a red ocean situation, you will have to afford a lot of competitors, much better than you maybe, much stronger, very angry, very bad. And the ocean will be full by blood. That's why red ocean. Let's imagine that you want to open a new restaurant in Berlin. There are so many restaurants. It's very difficult. If you don't have a special idea, you will be loser. The second possibility is to find a blue ocean. And the blue ocean is an industry where there are no competitors. So you make things differently in a way that was not available before. Think about the circus. Today, very few people are going to the circus. The circus are not popular anymore. There are any other kind of entertainment. But somebody decided to open a circus in a very innovative way. And this is the Circus du Soleil in France. They were winning because they made a circus without wild animals, but with light, sound effects, and so on. And they were able to create an industry, a market, where there were no competitors. They were the only one. And this is the blue ocean. This is what we should do when we decide to enter into the market. Find a new way. The next slide, please. So, again, the simple use of Industry 4.0 technologies or other technologies like embedded computers, cloud technologies, Internet of Things, and so on, new software, is not enough to make a factory smart. Like we said a few years ago, garbage in, garbage out. If you have a bad model, if you have a bad company, and you just put technologies inside your company, you will have a bad company with a lot of technologies. So you threw away a lot of money instead of investing in something that could help your company to become a reference in the market again. Next slide, please. So is the integration and orchestration of these enabling technologies in the context of the different company processes that becomes the key point to create the system intelligence. And the system intelligence is what we need to make our small or medium enterprise a winner. Next slide, please. Again, I would like to point out that Industry 4.0 was born in the technological area, but for Industry 4.0 to be efficiently developed, a full change of the organization is required. Technologies without a strategy are not enough for an Industry 4.0 environment to be implemented. So again, point number one is innovative idea. Point number two is a right business model, thinking about the blue ocean model, for instance, or other models. And only point number three is the selection of technologies. Technologies should arrive at the end of the process, not at the beginning. In conclusion, the next slide, please. Industries have generally been organized as linear value chains. And this gave birth to the vertically integrated organization, which was organized in such a way in order to control the entire value chain. Many speak about the so-called pyramid of the enterprise, where the top level, where the ERP system, where the decision system is working, is connected to other levels at the bottom side until the factory floor, where the machinery are. And this vertical model was very popular in the past. But nowadays, the organization requires a new model. Next slide, please. Digital technologies are continuing to gain adoption, and they started to enable a new way of organizing how value is created. And this transition means that we are moving from value change, from a vertical integrated value change to digital ecosystems, to networks. So this was my last slide. Thank you very much for your attention. And I go back to the organizer for the next panel.
Thank you very much, Valerio. Very interesting. You showed the potential of the technologies, but you also said very clearly it's not only about technology. It's about it's a step in order to be respected. And very interesting also this, what you said, this idea from moving to a linear organization to a rather network or ecosystem organization. I'm now handing over to our next panelist, Nicole Büttner. She's the co-founder and the CEO of Merantix Labs. She has a good founding history. She also founded another company before, Data Quotient, a data analytics and AI consulting firm. With also a platform helping companies on implementing machine learning projects. She is herself passionate also about, I would say, advising and educating governments on digital technologies and setting the kind of political agenda that is favorable to a prosperous technology environment in Europe. And in this function, she is also part of the Young Leaders of ASPEN Institute. So Nicole, I'm handing over to you now to give us your view of digital sovereignty and what SMEs can achieve in that context.
Thank you very much, Birgit, and thank you very much for having us. Maybe very briefly, right? Merantix was founded with a vision really to bring technology into production and really into application, because that's the way, and I think we're all here and we agree on this, that we want to create jobs with this, we want to create innovation for society to secure our well-being, right? And in different sectors, for example, healthcare, but also economic prosperity. So maybe let me, and I hope I haven't seen any signals, so I'm assuming that you can see my slides. Let me maybe briefly outline what I think are some of the challenges. I think, as Margarete Vestager said, we will not be the better Chinese. We're European and our economy is structured in a very different way, and we also have different ideas of how it should be structured. Still, this presents also a challenge for us because we have a lack of know-how in some of these areas. We have maybe challenges with budget and investment in this area of technology. We have an issue with fragmented data and also fragmentation in general of the industry, right? What has made us so successful in the last industrial revolution, right? The specialization is now becoming more of a challenge in an era where, yes, data-driven business models usually scale well with size, right? And so I think for us, it would be good to think about, right? If we think about SMEs being 99% of all the companies in the European Union, how can we address these challenges and build data-driven business models that kind of correspond to our economic structure? And I would like to build on what Valerio said, because he addressed some of the topics, right? And maybe become a little bit more concrete, maybe about how we do this at Merantix, how we think we can do this in a very concrete manner. And I will start, and maybe just to make a discussion a little bit more interesting, Valerio, I will say, yes, technology is not first, but if we don't keep technology in mind while building these structures, we're going to fail. Because at the end of the day, we also have to build the architectures, the know-how and everything with certain technologies in mind to make sure that we actually also use them. Escaping the SME dilemma, I'm just showing this with the example of data, but we can analogously look at this also from the perspective of know-how and people. I think if we want to stay really competitive, we will have to move away from these fragmented data pools where every company is kind of thinking data is my new oil and I need to work on it and I need to keep it and I need to defend it somehow. It is true, right? Some of this data is also sensitive. Some of it contains patented information. So I'm not saying just put it out there, open source it. But I think we have to move more towards an ecosystem. And Valerio, I'm building again on what you said, to move away from sort of linear systems to ecosystem. And I think if we want to become more competitive, we also have to improve our degrees of collaboration, data sharing, knowledge and know-how sharing. And I try to visualize this with this sort of ecosystem where we move away from silos, more to a comprehensive sharing environment. And let me show you how we think about this at Merantix. So we're thinking, and we're talking and working together with SMEs and building SME cohorts. So here in this graphic, you see an example, for example, from the building industry, right? Huge sector in the European Union, and I think a very good example, because you have varying degrees of digitization in the sector. So from the carpenter who arrives on the scene, to digital planning, to government in the area of approval for building, you have sort of the whole bandwidth of what can go on. And here we have to move to a thinking of really putting these actors around the table in an ecosystem, saying, how can we solve these use cases of building, right? And now in COVID, this was again a good example of a pandemic basically delaying some of the building, right? It becoming more challenges to coordinate different people, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the vision is very much to say, okay, let us not start with the big picture and like let everybody throw data just, you know, in some centralized pool, but let's start around maybe certain strategic value chains. You could also think about the automotive industry. You could think about the healthcare sector, right? This is sort of, you could copy paste this for different sectors and bring together players from that sector to build an open source data ecosystem where we can really pool resources and bring them together with AI partners. I mean, here I put Merantix. This is not a one company job. This is a, you know, something where I would encourage all the AI players to be involved and to connect to these ecosystems. So that maybe as one idea and something that we're already doing in Berlin. And we very much envision this as a sort of pan-European initiative. We're building an AI campus at the moment in Berlin to also create a physical space for this, to invite SMEs and corporates to work together with startups in this field and AI makers. And we think it would be a beautiful vision to have more of these hubs across Europe. And I very much invite all of you who are interested in participating in this or building similar initiatives in your respective member countries to get in touch with us. We're very interested in working on a European level. Yeah, and I think it's really important to share these insights, right? Not all SMEs, when you're facing this decision to buy or make a product, can make it themselves. And you cannot buy all of it either. So, you know, create an ecosystem where you can co-create and build, and also make sure that you can tap into the talent market. This is also an important component of the AI campus. And maybe I move on to my last slide, right? When we're thinking digital sovereignty or digital colonialism, just a few thoughts, and I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more in the discussion. I think we want to counterweigh, right, to the big players. I think absolutely we have to find our own way and maintain competitiveness, and the data ecosystems and AI labs and SME cohorts I outlined, we think would be one way, one puzzle piece in this. We think it's absolutely crucial to build know-how. So this is where we would invite all the companies and maybe also some of the European Union efforts to focus on, right, upskilling and reskilling. And I know that some of this is already going on. I think it's really important to think about how do we build a data ecosystem according to our own standards, where SMEs have the safety and can actually share data in a safe way and don't have the feeling other companies will benefit from this and then automate them away. And I think also pooling resources is crucial. I myself am from Germany. I'm sometimes, I know that on very federal levels and decentralized, we all want to build great infrastructure, but we have to link this together. Otherwise, it will not be oil wells, but oil sand, and very hard and costly to extract from. I'm looking forward to the discussion. Birgit, back to you.
Thank you very much, Nicole, for your ideas. Also very much insisting on needing to move away from a silo approach to a more comprehensive and sharing environment, also sharing the talent pool. I'm handing over now to Oliver Grün. Oliver is the founder and also the CEO of Grün Software AG in Aachen, in Germany. And he's also the president of the Digital SME Alliance, a stakeholder association. And since 2013, he's also the member of the Council of Advisors on Digital Economy at the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energies, and gives advice on issues concerning digital economy. So, Oliver, handing over to you to your view. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, from me also. I want to bring a little bit another point of view for SMEs in the discussion. So really as actors, or let's say as designers or enablers of digitization. So we are always talking about SMEs as the user of digitalization. I am, as said, I'm an entrepreneur by myself, and we have 200 employees, and we are a very small market leader for a very, very special B2B market in Germany. And with the European Digital SME Alliance, I'm representing more than 20,000 others of these companies. So we have a lot of companies in Europe which are on not on any industry, but especially working in the digital industry. And so we have digital enablers made in Europe. And most of people don't know, but most of the digital jobs, or of the jobs in the digital economy in Europe, are supported not by Google or anyone else, but they are supported by IT SMEs. So I think IT SMEs matters, and very important is that we have an ability inside of Europe to master this challenge, to be a pacemaker for the digitization of all SMEs on an eye-level cooperation with an IT SME like mine as an example. And so I think very important is to understand the term of digitization. It is often very differently discussed. First of all, I think we just have to discuss about the area of B2B digitization. We all know that the B2C, business to consumer game, we lost fully in search engines and all the other stuff. So I want to concentrate on the backbone of what is the backbone of our wealth. And this is business to business companies and business to business processes. And I think digitization is a two-step process. And the first step is digital optimization. We do it since 30 or 40 years. So we are using new software in companies. We are using new technologies for communication, like now with video conferencing system, or new collaboration systems. And all this stuff is only to optimize business models which are there. And there I agree with Valerio that the second step of digitalization is the most important, and this is, I call it the digital transformation. And the digital transformation is very important, but it's especially what we Europeans are not so well in. So I think the colleagues in the US and China are better in this, and this is really to invent new data-based digital models. And I think it's a big mistake if we all talk about the topic that COVID is a kind of turbo of digitization. I think COVID is only a turbo of the first step of digitization. Let's say to make new communication, to use new communication tools, or to use new collaboration tools. But if you only get a Zoom account, then you are not digitized. And in a lot of studies, we see that a lot of SMEs stopped their real future project, let's say their real digital transformation projects to invent new digital business models. And I think this is a challenge, very important to hold the digital sovereignty in the B2B area. I think this is still possible. And Minister Altmaier just said also the challenge is global innovation, and that's it. And we cannot only look inside of Europe. So I think very important is we must strengthening our digital sovereignty through sustainable digitalization here in Europe. And I see three pillars. The first is, of course, the sustainable digitization is a long-term process of real B2B relationships that turn non-digital businesses into digital front runners. That's, I think, very important. It's a long-term process. It's not just a quick thing. Secondly, I think part of sustainable digitalization should be green technology, very important topic. And of course, openness for open digital ecosystems, for circular economy and other things. And thirdly, for me, very important, because I want to be a free entrepreneur and I want to have real open markets, we need really innovation enabling policy and regulation, which we don't have right now. So these are the three pillars I see. Just some sentences about the three pillars. The first one, sustainable B2B digitalization. I mean, very important is that ICT and non-ICT businesses work together to develop new business models, transforming the non-ICT business from the ground up. And I think this is very good possible. So Nicole shows one example. And if we foster innovative digital clusters, or networks of analog and digital businesses, of universities, companies, public administrations, and of course, very important with digital SMEs and startups, and not only there, but there at their core. So I think very important is that a lot of digital clusters don't work because they are driven too academic. They are driven, let's say, by universities, very academical style, because I think innovation must be put on the road and not put on a paper. So I'm really looking like an entrepreneur on the things, and I think and I agree with Nicole that digital ecosystems should be practice driven, and we also have some ideas like a digital hub here in Aachen we built up, which is very well working with 300 companies. Half digital startups and the other half are industry and digital and SME companies from other industries than the digital industry. I think that's very good approach. The second is greener technology and circular economy, the second pillar. I think technology, if used sustainable, is a really indispensable tool in the global fight against climate change. Of course, IT, very often mentioned, is an emittent of CO2 emissions. The ICT footprint is about 1.52 gigatons per year. This is a lot, but if we see the enabling impact which can come from ICT, it can be 10 times more, about 12 gigatons of saved emissions. So if you see the advantage, it will help. So we must invest in this. Just look to 3D printing. If you see a physical supply chain where in some case thousands of individual parts are produced physically in different parts of the world and shipped around the globe to assemble and then shipped again to the consumer market. So I think all of these, but the last step can be digitalized, and so we can really be much better, and we can have an impact to save emissions a lot. Circular economy, another thing is, I think we have also tried to build a strong circular economy, fostering repair, reuse, and recycling of devices and other things. The third pillar I want to mention is innovation enabling policy and regulation, a very special topic. In the last years, we are not so happy with, let's say, a politically fostered mindset in fear of data especially in Germany, but in the whole of Europe. Of course, an example is the GDPR, the data protection regulation. It's very often over-interpreted. So we have some studies in Germany. We see that more than 50% of the SMEs stated that only the fear of violating the GDPR in any way inhibits their innovations effectively. So I think these things are very important, and also things like the copyright law reforms, a lot of bureaucracy, all these stuffs and all these steps we do in politics is to make burdens, in my opinion. And I think we should more enable. So policy and regulation must foster really more data use regulations than data protection regulations, and foster digital economy that builds on openness and of course on locked in and proprietary ecosystems, like Nicole says. I think we must foster these things, and for instance we can make allow experimental areas like a sandbox in Berlin for blockchain. That would be great, but we have a lot of regulations with the BaFin and all these things, startups, and they are not really able to make blockchain business very well in Germany, for instance. So I think we should, I would encourage you to invent the future together, and I'm very happy and interesting about the following discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oliver, first of all, for giving us a kind of optimist view on saying we have this ability in Europe to be a pacemaker and come to that what we call digital sovereignty, at least in the business-to-business context. We also note your call on the need to work better together, the ICT sector and the non-ICT sector. Also recalling the digital technologies as being really a key enabler for moving to a greener economy. And also for your last point on how regulation and how the overall climate, the perception of data, sharing data plays all into this. We have come to the end of the round of presentations, and everybody in the audience is still very welcome to send in your questions. I repeat again, you can use the questions and answers feed in the live stream to pose your questions. We already got two, but before I go to these questions, I would like the panelists to reply to one question, or it's probably a set of several questions around this concept of the digital sovereignty. If you would have to define it in a few words, how would you see the digital sovereignty? I mean, do we have to build up the European Googles? Also, how important is it for us, for you in your work, and for SMEs more generally? And I think you have. This would be nice to hear from you. A short wrap up, how you see it. Valerio, would you like to go first?
Yes, thank you. I would like to go back to the very interesting presentation that I heard from Nicole, and this will allow me also to connect to the second question that I see on the chat area. Nicole spoke about digital colonialism, and I would like to comment this digital colonialism, adding that digital colonialism is very strictly related to technological colonialism. So one thing is to apply digital technologies, existing digital technologies, to companies in Europe to make them more digital. But another thing is to develop digital technologies in Europe. So one of the key points is who will provide, who will develop in Europe the technologies that we need to apply Industry 4.0 models to our SMEs. Oliver spoke about European Google. Okay, that's very interesting, I agree, but I would like to comment that we already have many Googles, European Googles, but nobody is using them, or very few companies are using them. So I would like to warn about the risk of developing again the wheel or the hot water, like we say, because we must develop something new. We have a wide area, a wide panorama of technologies that we need now to make sustainability possible. And we should concentrate more on these, not just try to copy some American or Chinese technology to make it better for European companies. So the real question is what we need about new technologies, new developments. In Europe, we are already strong in some of technologies, like, for instance, controllers, industrial controllers. We are the world leaders, I can say, because we have companies. Some of them are based in Germany, and you know them very well. I don't make the names, but they are really world leaders. We are also very strong in software, industrial software. So we know how to develop SCADA systems, ERP systems, data collection, and so on. What we are missing are other technologies like virtual reality or cobots or digital twins and so on, where companies from the Far East or from the USA are better than us. So in part, we should create new technologies in sectors that are already available and make them more popular, like European Googles. On the other side, we need to find new technologies that our SMEs are requiring and trying to develop them in Europe, using the fundamentals that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerio. Nicole.
Let me maybe add to this, and thanks for your remarks, Valerio. So for me, sovereignty, right, the definition would be not to feel like a victim that cannot act, but like somebody who can actually make a choice and is in a position to make a choice and act between different options, right? So so I think we've put ourselves, unfortunately, or we find ourselves in some of these arenas, and I see one of the questions actually relates to this, right? In some of these playing fields, I would agree with Valerio, and some I would strongly disagree, right? When we look at digital infrastructure, we find ourselves very much in a position where we are not sovereign, because mostly the solutions that we see that offer the best quality for price are not coming from Europe. And we've, I would say, and I don't want to say lost the game and we can never catch up, but this puts us, and we see this whole discussion, right, around 5G, everybody can read about it in the newspaper. We see it's a serious discussion because it brings with it some serious questions about data protection and data sovereignty. I would say we should really try at this point, right, try to focus on areas and domains that we have a strong track record. And I agree with Valerio, right? The deep industrial sector is certainly one of those. And that's great, especially when we're talking to European SMEs. I would also add the biotech and healthcare sector, right, is also one of those where we have a lot of medical devices, a lot of biotech companies and so on that are also smaller, and where I think we can also build on our, I think, idea about data protection and create a space of healthcare, biotech applications that will be, I think, a hugely growing field. To be quite honest, when I think about biology, genomics, AI, I can see just so many use cases growing. Personally, I would like to use a product that's made in, that adheres to European data protection standards, let's put it this way, in those fields. And I would say we should really focus on building sovereignty also in those fields, right? It is, and maybe they're right. One of my pleas would be sometimes if I may allow myself, sometimes, right, as a startup, we're also applying for funding or we're applying for government contracts. And I was personally quite shocked to hear one of these agencies propose to us to bring on a big tech player from the US. And I was like, but why? Right? We're doing this now on this project, and I understand that they would like to participate. They will also participate basically at no cost. Haha, guess why? And, I don't understand why you would encourage us to do that. This might sound protectionist to some of you, but I am a European AI startup, and this is sort of the voice I bring to the table. So if you want us also to succeed, I think it is also important to use some of our solutions and think about how, as governments, as agencies, as SMEs, in a vendor process, right, you can also make use of these highly innovative companies, not just ours, many others that are out there.
Thank you very much. Oliver?
Yes. First of all, I want to make a short answer to Valerio. So because perhaps there's a misunderstanding, I'm not asking for a European Google, not at all. Because I said this game is lost. That's, for me, it's a B2C game, business to consumer. I'm talking about B2B. And if we look to B2B, I think this is the backbone of our wealth. And I think the question, if we hold the digital sovereignty of these B2B technology, will be very, very, let's say, a question of fate for in 2050. Because if we don't hold this, we have a problem with our backbone of the whole industry. So B2B is, for instance, let's say, enterprise resource planning software. So this is business critical software in all companies. And the market leader in the SME market is not SAP. SAP, the German big company, or other like Microsoft Dynamics or like Salesforce, or they are very often in the big companies. In the SME companies, in the industry, the market leaders are with 51% the others. And the others are all the IT SMEs together. And so they are market leaders. And I think it is very, very important to understand digital sovereignty and not to use digital technology. It's not about to learn how to use Microsoft or Salesforce, but of course, it is to design by ourselves, to be real actors. I'm an actor if I'm designing by myself and if I have still the process in my hand. So, and we must hold this in Europe, and this is very, very important. And we can do this, and this is not any developing against the market, but this is fostering the market leaders of today. We all do not see, because there are very, very lot of small hidden champions. And I agree with Nicole. For instance, with the strategy of governments are always, more or less following the US giants. That's not so funny in my opinion. So we have digital possibilities and abilities, and we must see them and we must foster them. Of course, only there where the market wants it. But if we talk about against will or against anything, I must say that our competitor of an enterprise resource planning software company in Europe is, for instance, Microsoft with Dynamics or Salesforce, and they all pay less than 10 times less taxes for their work here in Europe. And this is the second thing, that we have a lot of topics in the political agenda we must solve. We just want fair competition. We don't want to make anything against the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm coming now with 2 questions from the chat. I would ask you to be relatively short, because I see we have just another one coming in. First question is coming from Andrea Stefanidis. What about supporting clusters of SMEs, private and public organizations? So probably, Oliver, you can say something on this, and maybe Nicole as well. And then there's a very interesting suggestion from Tessa van Stiphout. the same way we are trying to extend our digital sovereignty, and the alternative is to find digital providers in Europe. But Europe is still lagging behind when it comes to the digital development. So this would come at a price, because at this moment, providers of digital services and products from US and China generally offer better quality for a lower price. So wouldn't we, in a way, then hamper the digital transformation from SMEs? And how can we solve that? So it's maybe also something for you, Valerio, but also the others feel free to come in on both questions, and please keep your answers to 2-3 minutes maximum.
Yes, I will make it very short. First of all, I think as the supporting of clusters of SMEs, especially public-private partnerships, I agree absolutely, and I would support this idea. I just told that we made a kind of cluster here in Aachen, which is called Digital Hub Aachen, where we bring together really companies, and they are also investing money in this cluster, and also the government is investing money in this cluster, and it's working very, very well. So I absolutely agree and would support this kind of public-private partnerships.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yes, I totally support that. I mean, we call it SME hubs, we can call it digital clusters. I think it's a matter of vocab. I think the important thing is to bring together different players, and those would be technology providers as well as technology users. And ideally, I would build on what Oliver said to make some know-how or knowledge transfer happen, so that SMEs, as you said, are not only technology users, but also generators, right? And really can sort of ingest all the new technology and start really also transforming whole business processes and business models with this knowledge about technology. Totally. And government, academia, right? These people could all be part of this.
My opinion is that we should improve the digital European ecosystem. And this means that every SMEs belonging to this ecosystem should bring its own resources. But of course, also the governments, local and European governments, should bring their resources, especially financial, especially guidelines, to help the European digital ecosystem grow up and become stronger like other systems that we see around the world. It was a news that I read yesterday that in the Far East, they made now an agreement before 40 countries to build something that is completely alternative to USA technologies, because they want to become more independent from USA technologies with the local technologies. We should do the same in Europe. We should become more efficient in cooperating among different countries, among different industries, to build a stronger European digital ecosystem. And for this, the politicians, the local and the general governments are very important, have a very important role.
Thank you. And maybe a comment on the question that came a bit provocative, that came from Professor van Stiphout, about whether we wouldn't kind of hamper the transition of SMEs if we want to go just for European technologies.
Yes, of course, a digital ecosystem is not closed. So also other companies can be part of the digital ecosystem, even if they are not European. And I would like to just comment the fact that many companies working in Europe have ownership that is not European. So we cannot make a barrier if a company wants to cooperate with European SMEs, looking if they are European or not. The digital system is a very complex body, and every partner that has something to give to the other partners in this system is welcome.
Yes, I would very much agree with Valerio that it's not about being, completely protectionist, right? That's not sort of not my ideal world either, where we basically live in isolation in the European Union. I also don't think that's the path to success, by the way. But I think, right, and I mean, my understanding of sort of the revising of current EU legislation, also the Digital Services Act and so on, is that we have certain areas where we want everybody who has market access here to adhere to certain rules on how to, for example, work on data protection. I think this is applicable both on the individual side, but also, right, partly when it comes to really sensitive data on the B2B side. I think we've seen some players also from various geographies who are maybe not fully transparent with what they're doing. And also it is very sensitive, I guess, especially when we're looking at sectors like bio, healthcare, pharma, where there are different layers and they vary from B2B to B2C. And I think we want to get that right.
Thank you very much. I have one more question in the chat. Not sure to whom to address it, so I will see who will volunteer. It's coming from Andrea Caputo. What do you think could be the role of the fintech ecosystem and fintech services more generally to support the transition of traditional SMEs towards more digital and sustainable businesses? Who would like to take this question? Valerio, maybe?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think, let me maybe, Valerio, and you can regroup. Sure. I'm also not a fintech expert, but I think obviously access to capital, right, is always crucial when you're thinking about making investments in new technologies. And if fintech can help providing this in a more efficient way, that's great. If they can do that, right? I would say the financial sector as a whole, right, is also serving SMEs, right? And we're seeing some of the regulations sort of moving, I think, in a direction, where we really want to be sure that SMEs have access to capital to make these innovative investments. I think that would be like my most important point on this, and also to startups. And I guess by serving in a digital way, you can probably reduce the cost of serving clients and SMEs and make it more efficient. So I would say probably it will be good, but no really concrete aspect.
Yeah, also from my point of view, I'm also not a specialist for fintech, but I think if you look to the normal business processes of a SME, then of course the financial processes are a part of the classical business processes, and it's very good if we have innovations here. I think altogether the fintech area is one of the areas where we have a lot of regulations. So I think we could foster this also with more experimental areas. So I mean sandboxes, like this means it is allowed to elaborate a fintech business model, for instance, with an upper limit of revenue where all permissions must be taken. So I think we need more sandboxes to get more innovative fintech ideas. But on the other hand, for the SMEs, I think it's part of a process which has to be digitized.
I would like to comment the fact that fintech is fundamental for supporting startups, especially, and this we can see in every country. where there is the presence of incubators. And the incubators could not survive without fintechs. So without investors that collect new startups and put them together with other startups to create something new.
Thank you very much for all your reactions. We are coming to the close of this panel, so I will do a quick wrap up. Thanks a lot for this very interesting insights and your views. What we have heard is what sovereignty doesn't mean copying, but rather understanding where we can find our strengths and capitalize on our strengths. And I like very much also the explanation of Nicole. You said you can make a choice and act. So, and then how to do it, we have heard it. We need to move away from silo thinking, from vertical organization into more network-oriented thinking, creating hubs, clusters, in which we have a sort of sharing of knowledge, and also some data transfers as well, of course, but also technology transfer. So, and yeah, I probably want to just bring in, because of course you have asked also about the role of regulators and so on. I just want to point also to some initiatives in that area that are also happening on the European level, like for example our digital innovation hubs that are also part of our strategy, which we really want to kind of broaden in their portfolio to really pick up this, how should I say, technology transfer idea. Also, I want to mention the European clusters initiatives, where we have a lot of activities ongoing and where we could link in. And more generally, you know that the whole idea of the recovery is based on an ecosystem idea now, where we really want to go away from this linear thinking, but understanding the interdependencies. So I think that your ideas have been very informative and also helpful for us on the public policy makers side. I would like to thank you. Also, thanks to the audience for your questions. I invite you to start already the networking now. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people in the audience who would be interested in picking up, in following up, in making contacts, and in sharing their knowledge and seeing possible ways of cooperation. So many thanks to all of you, and I hope that we stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.